What is going on YouTube? Okay, so today I'm going to show you guys how to shoot cinematic footage using nothing other than your iPhone. I'll be traveling to Hong Kong tomorrow, so I thought what better time to do this than now. I really don't like traveling with a lot of gear in my backpack or a lot of gear at all. All I'm going to be taking is my phone, this camera and one lens. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to head out quickly, shoot some footage on my phone, edit it, throw it in directly after this clip. You're going to watch it and we're going to come back here and I'm going to show you how we got it. Cool, deal. See you in a bit. Okay, cool. So that footage that you just saw was shot entirely on my iPhone and completely handheld. Alright, so the first thing I'd recommend doing if you want to shoot cinematic footage is to get yourself a manual camera app. The one that I've been using is called Filmic Pro, and it lets you change everything from shutter speed to white balance to focus to pretty much anything you'd need in a manual camera app. I think it's about $10 on the App Store, but if you don't want to spend any money on a manual camera app, you can actually do it in the native camera app that comes with the iPhone. All you have to do is hold down on the screen and slide your finger up and down to adjust exposure. Put your finger on the screen, hold down for a little while, a little box will pop up, and that will mean that your exposure and your focus is locked. So that means your exposure is not going to change when you darken the lens or when you open the lens. So on high-end cameras you get something called depth of field, and that basically means that stuff in the background is out of focus and stuff in the foreground is out of focus. And that's how you separate your subject from the background and shows depth. But with phones, we don't really have that luxury. So what we have to do is we have to use lighting, which is actually what I'm doing right now. There's a light here that's lighting me up, that's actually separating me from the scene. You need to pay attention to this when you're shooting on your phone. Look for scenes where you can separate your subject from your background using lighting, because we can't really use depth of field. Dynamic range is another big one. Dynamic range is basically the range that you have from your highlights to your shadows. So if you can see details in your highlights and details in your shadows, that sort of makes the footage look cinematic, or painterly as you'd call it. Because if you look at a painting, you can actually see the details in the clouds to the details in the deepest, darkest shadows. But an iPhone sensor doesn't have that capability. So what you have to do is you have to try and underexpose slightly. And by underexposing slightly, you capture a little more detail in the shadows as well as the highlights. And that gives the effect of a higher dynamic range. The next step would be stable footage. Nothing looks worse or more amateurish than shaky, unstable footage, and makes it look as if it was a home video. Unless, of course, that's the look you're going for and that fits the theme that you're going for. For example, an action scene or something that's crazy like a fighting scene, shaky footage will add to the effect of that. But if you want something that's cinematic and calm and smooth, stable, smooth footage is best for this. So what I recommend is actually shooting in 4K. Most phones these days shoot in 4K, so you can shoot wider and you can crop it in post. And by doing that, you can actually use that extra resolution that you have to stabilize your footage. Now, if you don't want to stabilize your footage in post, some phones actually come with stabilization built in. I'm using the iPhone 7 Plus, and that's got image stabilization built into it, and it makes the world of difference. But if you look in the sequence that I shot, there was a clip that I shot without stabilization enabled on the phone, so that I could see what I could do with it in post. And all I did was drag warp stabilizer onto it in Premiere Pro, and that stabilized the footage enough for it to look cinematic. And now again, if you don't feel like editing your footage and having to stabilize it afterwards, a cool trick is to use the Hyperlapse app. So this app is actually a time-lapse app, but if you record using Hyperlapse and you play it back at the same speed, it stabilizes your footage for you. Okay, moving on to the next tip. This is with regards to frame rate and aspect ratio. So when you go to the cinema, watch a movie, you'll notice that the video is actually wider than you would usually see, say, for example, on YouTube. And this is because this is a cinematic crop. Common ratio is the 2:3:5:1 ratio, which is a crop ratio that actually slims your footage down, gives it that cinematic look. So it isn't completely necessary to crop your footage like this, but it really does add to the overall effect. So just keep your composition in mind when you're shooting, because you're going to be losing a small bit of the top and the bottom of your footage. Another thing to keep in mind is to change your frame rate to 24 frames per second. This is the frame rate used in movies for that cinematic look. Most phones shoot on 30 frames per second or 60 or 120 even, but if you drop it down to 24, you'll hit that sweet spot for smooth cinematic footage. Now for the final tip, and that is color correction. Nothing makes your footage look more cinematic than color correcting it. The footage that comes out of camera never looks like it does in the final version. And what color correction does is it adds a complete mood to your image. You can change the tone completely, whether you want it to be cool and cold feeling or warm and bright. This is all done in post with color correction. It's completely up to you, and this is up to your stylistic view and your creative opinion on how you'd like to color correct your footage and what sort of mood you'd like to convey. So in the end, just have fun with it, have a vision in mind, and try and use these tips to translate that into your final product. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video if you liked this video, hit the subscribe button to see more stuff like this in the future, and thanks to YouTube for featuring me as creator of the day yesterday. How great is that? But I shall see you in the next video. Cheers.